We see Peter and John here have performed a miracle in the sense of healing the slain man. And we can also see that during this period of time, there was quite a controversy over this. Those individuals that were around there saw these things take place. They were amazed and wondered, and they began to listen to Peter and John as far as their preaching and teaching. At least some 2,000, evidently, we believe there. Because remember what he said there in Acts 2. There were some 3,000 that had obeyed. And now at this time, it seemed like there was now as 5,000. And this is, I believe, being included with the 3,000 that in Acts 2. So some 5,000 are involved in the hearing the gospel of Christ, obedience to the gospel of Christ. And we can see that there was probably a great stir all around Jerusalem, because this is not something to be kept quiet. When you got 5,000 people, at least 5,000 people there, there's something going on. So there's a little bit of a wondering as far as the scribes and the Pharisees, the elders, the high priest. And we can see that these individuals were seeing those that were under them now being led to Peter and John in the gospel of Christ. And it was causing a little problem. They didn't like this because they were losing their authority or their power over these individuals. And we can see just as Peter and John were preaching and teaching, they were much like Jesus in that they were preaching and teaching with authority, and not as the scribes and the Pharisees, which were teaching basically tradition, not the gospel of Christ, or not the law of Moses. So we can see there, after they had seen these things, they are called. Peter and John are called into question. The Sanhedrin are called together. We see that from last week. They are in the midst. They are asking questions, and Peter and John are also answering their questions. And we can see that because they couldn't find anything wrong with their teaching, or wrong that they could accuse them of or punish them, we can see that during this period of time, they run out of time. And they said, well, we're going to hold you tomorrow, and we're going to find out what's going on. Again, examining, could not find anything wrong. Brings us to about verse 23. Well, actually, we're going to be dealing with verse 22 first. For the man that had been healed was above 40 years of old, and whom the miracle healing was showed. In other words, over 40 years old, this is not a child, is it not? This is an individual that had been there at the temple complex, maybe at different places. They knew this man. They had seen this man. So it wasn't, maybe he was just too young and now he can walk. No, it wasn't that way. For 40 years he'd been in this condition. Now, in verse 23, and being let go, these are the Peter and John being let go, they went to their own company and reported all that the chief priests and elders had said unto them. After being warned, many times people would say, well, if I've been warned not to do that again, well, I won't do it again. Kind of like you're driving down the highway and you're going at a little bit excessive speed, and the officer pulls you over and tells you, don't do this again. You're a little bit more apt to behave yourself and be more aware of what's going around you. Well, they probably had the same idea. If we could get Peter and John to kind of shut up, we'll threaten them with punishment if they don't shut up, and this will cause them to be quiet. Kind of like the idea, cut the head off the snake and maybe it'll go away. So we can see they came back to who after they were reprimanded? Came back to their brethren, were they not? Notice again, they came back to their own company. Here's other Christians. And we can see that they may have been, maybe these individuals have been praying. What had taken place there in chapter 12, if you read a little bit further on, we find there was some apostles that were in prison, were they not? And what was the congregation doing for Peter? Praying for him. Okay, so maybe these individuals was also praying for Peter and John. Regardless, if they wasn't, they should have been anyway. Now, what does the Lord say about praying? Is it important?
Pray without ceasing.
Pray without ceasing. What else?
A prayer of a righteous man.
Righteous man availeth much. So there is this importance of prayer. Remember a little bit earlier, you remember whenever Jesus, his apostles came to him and said, we could not heal this man because of this or that. And what did the Lord say? One of the things they lacked was what? Prayer. And he said, pray about this. There's some things that you have to pray about. And we can see here's these individuals probably praying. We did see it there as far as Acts 12. But I think they were probably praying for Peter and John's release, that they might be able to again teach the Word of God. And something else that I think is quite interesting. They all, people of all ages, we might say, test their Christianity or their character, we might say, if that'd be a better way of saying it. When something happens, who do they run to for fellowship or for comfort or companionship? Who should they run to? Put it that way. That's a better way of saying it. Yeah, to the church, to God. There is that comfort that he is offering. And I think this is important. And I think about whenever I was preparing this, I was thinking about there in Psalms 23rd, when David said, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Where is his comfort? In God. And I think the same thing is true of us. He's offering us comfort, and for the trials and tribulations that might arise, he said, here is the comfort. What he said about as far as those in his hand, my children, they're in his hand. He wraps an arm around them protection. We can see many times in David's writing concerning the problems that he was having in reference to God's relation with him. And so the same thing is true of us. When we have troubles and trials, the old devil's after us. I mean, he's doing his best to try to get us away from God. All the others he's already got. The Christians is the ones he's after. So who do we turn to whenever we have a problem? These two, Peter and John, they turn to the congregation there. They come back to them, telling them what is taking place, what happened. And there's no doubt that they were, it's kind of something new. I want to tell you what's going on, keep you aware of all the surroundings. It's a wonderful thought. And I think this is something that we need to do today as well. There's no, they wasn't, let's put it this way. These Peter and John were not puffed up for healing this individual. Look what we did. Have you ever heard that expression? Look what we did. My dad used to have a little saying that, look what we, look at the bear that we shot, or Pop did it, or something like that. I can't remember exactly how that saying goes. Yeah, we killed the bear, but Pop shot it. So this is the idea. They were not boasting of what they had done. They were giving the glory to God that it deserved. And we can also see that whenever let's turn to Romans 12 there in verse 15. What does the verse say there? Anybody remember? Give you a hint. It says, rejoice with them that rejoice.
With them that rejoice and weep with them that weep. Okay.
So here is the idea again of what we're talking about here in this verse. They come back to the church. They're rejoicing together that they had the opportunity to teach the word of God, and they were willing to even give up their life. We can see a little bit later on, Stephen did give up his life for the gospel of Christ. Doesn't matter because he knows is the expression. I know who I am in and who I am, who is protecting me. I know who I am. I believed in and persuaded that He is able to keep that which I've committed unto Him against that day. So here's the love again that we can see from that. So they're rejoicing. They're coming with their company. They report all that the chief priests and elders had said unto them. Oh, they told us we couldn't preach, but we're going to preach anyway. So there's this boldness or this determination that we can see within these two individuals. All righty. Notice verse 25. Well, actually, verse 24 and 25. And when they heard that, they lifted up their voice to God with one accord and said, Lord, thou art God, which hast made known or made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is that's in them, and who by the mouth of thy servant David has said, why did the heathen rage and the people imagine vain things? What do you think is going on here? We can see that there is those who oppose the church. Is it not true? Most assuredly. There's individuals that write articles constantly against the church, against this or against that God, or against the commandments of God. Not long ago, I was reading an article that said that the Bible needs to be thrown out and a new one written. Why? What's wrong with the one we've got? We're not doing what it says. So why do you want to revise it? Why do you want to throw it out and write a new one? That's the whole key to it. And I think that we have we have the idea, I think, that we have our own individual ideas. But I want to do it this way. I want to do it that way. Not what God says, but what I want to do. Well, that's what he's dealing with here a little bit later on there in verse 25. Notice, though, that in verse 24, and when they heard that, these things that Peter and John are saying, they lifted up their voice to God with one accord. Now, what is he talking about here? What do you think he's saying here? What's the idea that he's trying to convey to us? Not only agreeing, but what else? What about praise, honor, glory? Think all these things was involved with that? Oh, I think so. Yes, sir. And they're rejoicing and they're giving God the glory for all these things. Lord, thou art God, which has made what? Heaven, earth, sea, and all that's therein. We can go back to Genesis 1 and 2 and find out real quick who's the creator, can we not? We can turn to John 1 and find out who's the creator. Is it not true? Yes. So they're honoring God in all the things that he has created. Can man do this? Can man create anything? We might make confusion, all right. But as far as creating anything, we can't create anything. We take what's here and change it this way or change it that way. But as far as making something from nothing, no. Can we speak it into existence? No. Man has great abilities. He can, as the saying, they can travel from here to the moon and back, and they can travel in space. They can do all these things. We can travel from one continent to another continent in just a few minutes almost. And it's amazing that how advanced we have become. But we still need what? God. Our existence depends upon God's love for man. So they're glorifying God. They're honoring him. And he is, like I said, he is the creator of all things. And notice, for as David was concerned, he said, this is a prophecy back in the book of Psalms in the, I think it's the second chapter, I believe. Chapter 1 in Psalms 2, 1 and 2, I believe that's right. I can't remember now. Now notice what he says here. He says that, Lord, thou, or no, excuse me. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine vain things? What do you think he's talking about here? What is reference to here?
They're going to be disgruntled about things that go against what they want to do.
Yeah, there's quite a conflict, is it not?
People imagine or plot things that are not necessarily true.
Well, one of the things to note there is the difference in the terminology, of course, when you look at what it is that, of course, this isn't in a prayer.
Right.
Peter and them prayed, so he's making reference to prayer. David had stated that he used a little bit different point in the language. Peter's prayer, why did the heathen raging? When you go back to Psalm 2, it's evident that things that were going on at that time, why do they rage? There were problems that David was having to deal with in his day. And when you got these people that set themselves up against what it is that the Lord has stated, what he has determined to do, and when in fact they're faced with that, and there is the sense to not comply with that, and there are those that do, and that's being emphasized, then there are those who are always going to throw up their opposition to things of that nature. Of course, when you look back at the time of David too, you get there's a lot of questions like that that go through their mind, and it wasn't just the heathen. I mean, you have people nowadays that kind of put in the same category. They claim to believe in God, but yet when they're saying, all right, here's what the scriptures teach, then they get mad at you.
Right.
You know, they're not mad necessarily at God. They would make a claim to do that, and then they get irritated at you and then want to kill the messenger.
Right.
But it's a common thing when faced with matters of that nature. And then the difference between that and then back during the day when, of course, when David was living, you had idol worshipers, and then you had those that, which is their production of all these things, which are absolutely fruitless. But then those that as well making up things even about him in order to try to destroy him and that type of thing. It's just, well, it's just an ongoing thing when there are those who are faced with having to do with what it is God wanted to do and they don't want to do.
Okay. So it's the opposition there. Let's think about an individual who had a great deal of opposition whenever he went to Mars Hill. Anybody remember who that was? Paul. What about the goddess Diana with the Ephesians? You have a little problem there? All right. What? Not only that, what about at Corinth? Here's all these oppositions that Paul faced, probably the other apostles faced as well, but we have recorded there. Here's this opposition to preaching of the Word of God. And again, like Brother Tom said, how many times do we face that today? We see people that I know that's what it says, but that's not what I want to do. And it's sad that we have the man that has attitude like that. So even preaching the Word of God, unless they change their attitude, they're going just, I can't believe it. Well, let's go back a little bit. We'll go back. We'll fix to go ahead a little bit. What did those that Stephen preached to, what did they do? Did they close their eyes and their ears to the truths of God? And we don't want to hear this. Got mad, and we can see they stoned Stephen to death because of that. So here's the same idea that he's talking about here, are quite similar to it, as far as opposing those that are faithful to God. Okay? And so one accord, they're praising God, and then we can see there's those individuals on the other side that's opposing God. Now, the kings of the earth stood up, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ.
That's a statement that's rather comprehensive. we have a tendency to think of it only in terms of the time when Peter and them were living. This goes a long way back.
Yes.
You're talking about even the time when the people of Israel were coming out of Egypt. Because even though Jesus was not here physically, who was it was leading? Well, we know that he was the one that was in charge. But you remember you got the pillar of cloud by night, or fire by night and cloud by day. 1 Corinthians 10 mentions that the fact that they followed that rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. He was the one that was leading them through. It was him that also had told Moses when Pharaoh asked you who's telling you to turn their people, that was, you say, I am that I am. And so when these people, Abraham's lineage, through whom this one, Messiah, was going to come, who was before Abraham, put all of this in motion anyway, there are going to be those that are going to oppose that.
Yes.
And have opposed it ever since. And then it all comes to a head when he is here. When he does come. And you can begin to see the common man, the one that rejected him at the start, some of those, well, I'd say the common man, those among the elite, because of the fact that they knew that he had lived in Nazareth. So they did not put together the fact that he had been born in Bethlehem. They knew that this Messiah was supposed to come out of Bethlehem. The information had been glossed over or not known. So they were not going to accept him because he was out of Nazareth. He did not fit the mold of what they thought he was supposed to be as far as the Messiah is concerned. So then when there are those among the elites, then first thing, even when he's born, when the message comes from the white elite, you know, we're looking for where the Christ child is, or, well, you need to tell me where he is so I know where to put it. Well, that was his ruse to set things up. That's another indication that he's standing up, and his indication he's against the Lord. And so this is something that is perpetuated. Then you see during the time of his trial, he's brought before the Roman governor. He's sent to Herod, back to Pilate, and all these common things, and making themselves clear that they are not viewing him as the one chosen of God. Now, Pilate recognized that he was innocent, but he still doesn't know who he is.
Right.
And even though Jesus made it clear, when he even asked him, you know, are you the king of the Jews?
I say,
So there's to that, it is as thou sayest. But you got to understand, my kingdom's not of this world.
okay.
So that's one of the reasons why he doesn't view it that way. But when he doesn't stand with him and pronounce him free, and then it's tantamount to him condemning him. And so you got all those little things to me that are part of the comprehensive statement that is made right here.
And another thing we need to think about, we talk about in the past, but what about nations today who oppose God? There are nations that we see today that stand up, and those who want to preach the gospel, they refuse to let them in.
You've got people here that are trying to make us think.
Yes, and that was one of the things I'm fixing to bring up as well.
Their vitriol against things that have to do with Christianity, they're trying to deadlock the best try to destroy.
And this is why the saying has been said: if you destroy the home, you destroy the nation. And I think this is very, very true of today, because what about the sanctity of the home? It's not what it is. The expression, not what it used to be. It used to be a place that we could come together and to share and to enjoy company. now is the expression is just basically become kind of like the filling station. We just come in there and fill up and take off again. And we forget.
Fellowship and no family orientation as far as teaching and things like that.
All the electronic things took place of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's Marx's view. Marx had that idea, destroy, you undermine and destroy the family, and emphasize the state.
Yeah.
So in doing so, you're de-emphasizing God as well, because God patterned him, I'm sure he was aware of it.
Oh, yes.
It was a home. So you destroy all that, you remove him as well, and you emphasize the state.
Right. But here's the kings of the earth. These are the rulers. These are the ones that are leaders. Those are the ones that we look to as, well, they're in authority, so therefore I need to follow them. And notice also when he says as far as the kings and the rulers, those that are under him, those that are carrying out the commands that the king is giving, whatever he says, then they make sure that they're kept or they're done. And they're opposing everything that God does. And brethren, it is a growing problem in our nation today. And it seems like instead of going down, it's going up. It's increasing more and more because of people's attitude toward the church or toward God. Less love for God, less love for our fellow man. And
This is kind of an interesting paradox at the present time. It's kind of hard to read that. But you look at a good portion of our nation now, the culture in which we live, there seems to be the effort to swing back right toward God. You're seeing some effort, but when that is taking place, you will also note what the media will emphasize is those that rage. And they always get their viewpoint of things, and then their viewpoint is always to skew those that are the Christian ones, but I don't know, there may be a little bit more. It's kind of hard to determine that. That's just interesting observation to make, because it just seems some of the things that are reported, you're seeing more and more that are trying to emphasize righteous things, godly things. But the more we do that, the more angry the others become.
mm-hmm.
And the more that they cry out and rage and want to burn and tear up things, and then they want to become militant. And which is the way they have been for a number of years, but now that there is a more threat to their lifestyle and their way of living, it's the wounded dog that's barking now.
Yeah.
Interesting observation.
All right. And we can see, I think we can see quite quickly the trend that and I'm using as far as our nation is concerned, the trend that our nation is going. And again, it gets back to the point that I want to emphasize: we should pray for our nation and those in authority, that the freedoms that we enjoy that we should continue to ask God to continue to bless us with that. Because whenever it does keel over, it's going to be a great
His patience.
going to be a great disaster.
Well, there is significance to the phraseology long suffering. It's not eternal.
That's right. Because whenever the final results is said and done, then they'll be separated. Okay. All right. Any questions? All right. Let's look at verse 27. For of a truth, against thy holy child Jesus, whom thou hast anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, were gathered together. For to be whatsoever thy hand and thy counsel determined, before to be done. It's an interesting verse. The Roman governors, we talk about the Herod and Pontius Pilate, and the Gentiles, those that we might say the Roman soldiers, those that were in authority there as well, under the command of them. We can see that they decided that along with the Jews, we just need to get rid of this man called Jesus. He is causing too much trouble. The mob is calling for his crucifixion, and he's just one man. So therefore, we need to get rid of this one man, and let's keep this from escalating into something gigantic that might cause a little problem in Rome, and then they come down here and reprimand us, and we suffer the consequences. Let's just get rid of Jesus and be done with it. And notice he says, as far as the truth against the holy child Jesus, whom thou hast anointed, we could see in John 1, and the word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we could see who was that? Of course, Jesus. He performed the miracles before them. They could see that. His teaching was such that they could see that. There was nothing hid. It wasn't something done in secret. But what happens whenever we have the expression, if you upset the apple cart, what happens? Well, this disrupts our form of lifestyle or our life or tradition, anything along that line. But let's notice something there in verse 28 and deal with verse 27 and 28 together. For to do whatsoever thy hand and thy counsel determined before to be done. What reference you think? We go back. Remember what Peter and the others there in Acts 2, there in about verse 23. What does it say?
He will be delivered by the determinate counsel and foreknowledge of God. We have taken in the wicked hands, by the hands of lawless men, have crucified and slain. Okay.
Now, I think that goes along with what he's saying here, maybe just kind of reiterating what was said in Acts 2. He being determined, delivered by the determined counsel. What about this foreknowledge of God?
It had been determined, even back as far as Genesis chapter 3, that Jesus was going to be put to death. And then you look at Isaiah 53, prophecy concerning his death, he would be like a lamb led to slaughter, and he wouldn't offer up any resistance or anything of this nature. But you go back over and notice here how all of these things, we'll need to put this a little bit of context. You go back over to Mark 15 chapter just a second. And when you look at Mark 15 and verse 11, it's during the time of part of the trial. Remember, Pilate had, he knew that because of envy, the chief priest had delivered him. But it's the chief priest, verse 11, that moved the people that he should rather release Barabbas unto them. So they had already pre-planned how that they were going to react to this situation, because they knew that this tradition was going to take place to release one of the other prisoners. And so when that choice comes up, you cry out, release Barabbas, but you cry out, crucify the Lord. So all of that has been brought out, maybe brought out in Acts, the 2nd chapter. This is the point that Peter makes. And when you see it in this text right here in Acts 4, that it had been predetermined, the point that he made in Acts 2 is by your wicked hands. Mm-hmm. In other words, you are not devoid of responsibility in this situation, although it was the Romans, he was crucified on the Roman cross. You're not amiss from responsibility here, because it was your pride that brought that about. Mm-hmm. So it's your blood's on your hands, and all of that all together is the realization realization comes upon them, and I think this is the reason why you see what you see in Acts chapter 2 and in verse 37, then brother, what shall we do? Is the realization at this point, as Peter has made it clear, we were doing the bidding of God right here, but that was not something that we really can relish in at this particular point, because we're responsible for having killed the divine Son of God.
Yeah.
But that was predetermined.
And in Luke 22, verse 2, along that same line, I thought about that. And the chief priests and scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people, rebellion. And we can see that God does not beat down the storm, but he does ride it out and makes something from it.
And so, that's the reason why the chief priests were convincing the people to do what they did.
That's exactly right. And so things work out together with God's divine providence, we might say there. All right.
People like to blame somebody else, they don't want to take the situation upon themselves. Responsibility that I did it. And the Jews, they had that idea that we blame it on the Romans, that we're free and clear. They were the ones standing here saying, we're going to find those that had been company with Jesus, like the son that had been fed during the time he fed the
Okay.
witnessing his miracles. So he's like, well, let's blame them.
Well, you have, that's the interesting part of this too.
Yes.
Is that the Jews tried to dismiss themselves responsibility. And Pilate walked in. So, who's responsible?
They all were.
All right. Let's begin then with our next verse. Appreciate all's comment. Thank you.
Punish everybody, go get it.
We're gonna get-